As I said, I'm Greg Gearheart. I work at the Stormwater Program. I've had previous jobs at regional boards, San Diego and the San Francisco Bay Regional Board, and then I'm now at the State Water Board. I've also worked in enforcement. I was the director of the Water Board Academy, which is an internal training institution. We have 1,200 to 1,500 staff at any moment, really. We're a large organization. At least half those people are dedicated, scientists, engineers, geologists, planners. They're dedicated to the water mission. So we're a big organization. If we can get ourselves to do it right, there's hope. What I'm going to talk about is the nuts and bolts of our regulatory system, and in the context of actually doing something. So in the spirit of problem solving, again, if our goal is to actually protect creeks and streams, then I'm going to explain how we try to do that, how our different programs intermesh and overlap. There was something, does anyone know what that creature is on the right-hand side? Okay, I think it's a Pacific lamprey, but I don't know. It's a cartoon. The purpose of it is, it's also, do you guys recognize the animal on the shirts? It's a lamprey. Okay, so we got the mouth identified by 3 teeth, I think, on the top. And then we've got the salmon and the lamprey on the back. The mission there is to sort of talk about these less charismatic animals that are really dependent on us doing our job. So rather than have a pretty Chinook on our t-shirts, we went with the lamprey. The other thing that I've heard is that this implies that we know we suck. No, I'm just kidding. That's on tape. Okay, so here we are. This is the mission of the water boards. The key words to take out of this are water resources, so it's not just about water quality. Use, the word use, because it's all about uses for us. Our authority derives from the people's use of water. And then the present and future generations. So if you read our mission carefully, this is what we're all about, is setting a roadmap for California to have better uses of our water as we grow like crazy. So speaking of growth, here it comes. This is where the growth is happening too. It's in areas that weren't traditionally easy to develop. So in some areas of the state, you got ag lands that are being converted still, and low-lying floodplains and what have you. Hopefully not too many floodplains, but you're also getting people moving up into the foothills, the transition areas, and in the headwaters. So it's more and more critical, if you will, that we do it right. You can mess up pretty bad in a floodplain, and if it floods, yeah, people lose their house, but the river still functions like it wanted to. But if you start screwing up the headwaters and the transitional areas, you're going to have really big effects downstream. Another example, growth, going in the foothills. This is a nice sort of demographic projection showing where it's going to happen. So the darker the color, the more growth. 200% or greater projected growth in the dark colors. And that's projected out to 2040. One of my favorite things to ask people not around here, obviously, is why is it there a little corner up in Del Norte that's growing like crazy? And some people know it, but it's Pelican Bay. It's the prison, yeah. So, but if you notice, it's happening in areas that aren't necessarily metropolitan, urbanized areas. So that's another reason why it's really critical that we get it right. In many urban areas, you've got sophisticated planning departments, complex regulations trying to get people to do the right thing, consultants. You got everything kind of lined up. The stars are better lined in those areas. You go out to like Stanislaus County, and it's already wrecked. So yeah, it's they're spending money to try to daylight and retrofit and stuff. But you go out to like Stanislaus or Tehama or one of these counties that's in the dark area, and you call up their planning department, and it's also the public works guy maybe. So it's really a different paradigm. So it's heading for these significantly precarious parts of our state. So our thing as an agency is to focus on building right in the first place. It's a bit of a pollution prevention approach. The term that I'm going to use is hydromodification. It's short for hydrograph modification. It's also a word that can be used to describe any kind of, not just hydrograph, but any kind of hydrologic changes. So putting a dam in the stream, in my mind, is hydromodification. Putting levees next to the stream is hydromodification. Many people think of it purely as hydrograph, though. So just so you know, and I'll explain, or someone will explain, I think, what a hydrograph is. Hopefully I have that slide. But if you think about it, when you develop, if you take an area that's like a sponge before, and you turn it into a Teflon cookie sheet, and both of those you pour water on, you're going to get a very different landscape response. So what we have in most areas is more natural spongy type of things. After you build out, it's like the floor of this room. So you spill water, you rain on it, whatever, and it changes the way it behaves. So that's what it's really all about. So if we can build in a way that keeps the landscape functioning more naturally, so to speak, then we can really do a lot to prevent the pollution. Gave you my definition already. Lanes diagram is a really good way to demonstrate the relationship between sediment and flows in relation to a stream stability. So if you think about it as a scale, and you got sliders on both sides, if you're going to change any of these things, including how much sediment, types of sediment, and you slide that thing around, the scale will change appropriately. Same with the waters, the flow. And the flow is also, in this case, it's demonstrated by stream slope. But if you think about it as just simply the volume in that beaker or pitcher, then it's the same idea. You change that amount, you're going to change the stream's response to it. The streams are living, dynamic systems. You change any one of these variables, and you're going to get a response. What is hydromodification? This is an example of an incised stream, probably as a response to changing in the way that the flow came upstream from it. More flow came along, it wanted to move more sediment, couldn't find sediment maybe in the bed, so it looked at the bank and the bed. So not only did it incise down, but it's eating away the side of the bank because it wants to move sediment. The system is moving sediment like it knows how to do. Another example, the pre and post is on the right-hand side. Many people have pointed, this is in the Bay Area. This is in the foothills above Milpitas, I think. And many people have pointed out that it's not necessarily fair to show a system that is just snapshots in time, but this is pretty dramatic change. It may end up stabilizing back or going back towards a more aggraded system with natural looking banks and stuff, but in the meantime it's done some pretty serious degradation, incising, digging down, hungry water, if you will. Okay, so I ask the question often, are we still hardscaping our streams? Anyone know what I mean by that? Okay, here's an example if you don't. This is Chicken Ranch Slough in Sacramento, probably built in the 50s. Flood control, primary goal, flood control. Many rivers don't take right-hand turns like that, but this one does now. And it's probably because they didn't want to run into those propane tanks or whatever at the end of the river, so just move it around it. Does this still happen? Does this happen in this area? I ask you guys. Okay, it still happens in our areas too. So here's 2000s in the Sacramento area. It looks very similar, a little smaller. Primary purpose is not flood control. They actually built this as a stormwater management system. But there's functionally no difference. It's it's concrete with armoring everywhere where there could be a problem. And its goal is to move the water as quickly as possible down. It's for a different size storm event. It's a much smaller storm event, but it's the same idea. It's a lost opportunity in my mind for beneficial uses. You make it a more natural system, you gain some beneficial uses along the way. In their mind, it was a maintenance nightmare to do anything like that. We'd have to get in there and clean it and get permits and what have you, so they moved on. This is an example of that same system downstream. It is now unraveling in Sacramento. And what I mean by that is the stream is trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do in this confined system? And it's literally overbanking and starting to erode on the side. It has figured out a way around this system. So our best intentions are still maybe not being met because we're going to now have to go in and maintain the system properly. Here's another example of replumbing a watershed. It's a water park in San Luis Obispo. It's supposed to be a joke. Okay, so we focus on hydromodification, but we've forgotten about the sediment side of the scales. As I mentioned earlier, as we go into hydromodification, the easy stuff comes naturally to us. There's a lot of debate about how to calculate pre and post construction, volumes and times of concentration and what have you, but there's absolutely no discussion really about the sediment side. So if our goal is to protect streams and creeks, we can't just simply look at the volume. We got to consider the whole system, I think. And that is one of the challenges, because I'll get into why our programs don't necessarily look at that. So this is an example of sediment transport in Malibu Canyon. Got a laugh on that, that was good. it's really important also to talk about the watershed context. So rather than just say we want everything to be pre-construction volumes, regardless of where it is, or we have a standard that doesn't take into context where in the watershed it is, we're also losing some perspective on the bigger system. So if you build the same project down on the left-hand side of the project, that's in Chicken Ranch Slough watershed upstream of the other one I showed you. You do build a project there, you're in the floodplains, it's already urbanized, it's already pretty hammered, so to speak. So it has a different response. Your ability, your buffer of your safety zone, if you will, is much different than if you're on the right-hand side, which is another area slated for development in Placer County. And so you clearly, you'd want to look at different things. Your goals may be very different. So just saying hydromodification is bad and we shouldn't do it is part of the solution, but you got to put it into context with what you're trying to do. And what about the floodplain? We don't actually we don't regulate the floodplain very well. Who in here is familiar with the riparian setback? Okay, what's California or what's Arcata's? Okay, well it's very different throughout the state, as you may know. So you get one number in one city, you get another number in another city. There's ways to get around that number if you need to. But as the agency that's mandated to protect our streams and the beneficial uses, we don't have any numbers. We don't even have a method that we use to sort of assess how much streamway width would be needed. So as an agency, I also sort of put back on us, we should be thinking about this. I know that it's tricky and it's political. You start messing with local governments and their authorities to say where a project can go. But if we really want to protect the streams and the rivers, we got to go there, I think. We've started using the term streamway width because that implies the amount of width. It's still somewhat limiting, but it implies the amount of width that a stream needs to meander and do its thing, provide some flood storage, but also just be dynamic. So streamway is a term that comes out of Ohio. The state of Ohio has a pretty evolved streamway methodology for calculating using regional curves and fancy stuff like that. So that's kind of where we're going, but I agree, riparian buffer is not a good way to look at it. To understand us, you need to understand what makes us regulate. So we're all about standards. As an agency, our primary mission is to, like I said, to protect those resources from threats, but when it comes down to it, it's about standards. And what I mean by that there's two kinds of standards. There's the standard that's the combination of a beneficial use and an objective, and then there's this example of degradation standard. So in other words, there's what is actually going to be used out in Jolly Giant Creek. Are there habitat values? Are there swimming, recreational contact, water contact? Are there dog walking, non-water contact recreation? That's one way to look at the standard. The other one is Jolly Giant Creek is in a decent shape now. Don't let it get any worse. So those are the two ways that we regulate. And the actions we do, whether it's writing permits, taking sort of one-time permit/enforcement actions like the 401 certification, doing enforcement of some other program or permit or prohibition or basin plan objective. So Mark will talk about that, but no matter what we're doing, it comes down to that standard idea. Did someone do something to make the standards, to violate our standards? Before I get to this, this is a bunch of different standard or beneficial uses. I wanted to mention the idea of the first example, beneficial use plus an objective. The easiest example for me to convey usually is water contact. If you're going to go swimming in some water body, the use would be called water contact recreation, meaning that water body is designated to support swimmers or kayakers or people who are going to be in contact with the water. And then how you protect that use is somewhat optional, but usually people use a pathogen indicator standard. So is someone going to swim in that water and get sick? Well, how do you measure that? You do some sort of pathogen indicator test, and right now it's somewhat limited, but it's changing rapidly. So for example, are there bad pathogen things in the water that could get sick? We don't necessarily know, so we use an indicator, you test it, you measure that, you get a value, you compare it to a chart, and then you either have a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether that use is being supported. Does that make sense? These are all the beneficial uses that we use to protect streams and wetlands. The point here is there's no one beneficial use right now that says stream functions or wetland functions. It's a combination of uses. So if you have a wetland that, for example, has warm water habitat, maybe bats live in the riparian area, and your goal is to protect bats, you would really find it difficult probably to find the right beneficial use because you want the system to be protected. You don't necessarily just care about bats, but you want the system to be protected. And it takes a lot of these. It takes an amalgam of uses to protect wetlands and streams. That's the point. And there's a bat. So what beneficial uses are is they are designated in the basin plans. Each regional board has a basin plan, and that basin plan is essentially the map for how to deal with that region's uses. So it'll have literally maps, and it'll say this reach of the Eel River supports these uses: swimming, recreational water contact, and that would be the tool to protect kids from getting sick who swim in it. But it's designated in that basin plan, and the basin plans are updated somewhat. They're kind of in a TMDL mode these days. They're hyper obsessed with TMDLs, but they really are our tools. And so my point to you as citizens and users of these waters, make us use our basin plans the right way. Make us update them if they're not the right thing. Help us form these basin plans to be protective and drive us towards what you want, because it's really your basin plan. Stormwater, actually, protecting a stream or a creek ends up falling on us and then filtering out into programs. And the programs are examples like stormwater regulation, wetland regulation, wastewater treatment plant regulation. They kind of, once they hit us, they sort of fall into these different boxes, if you will, buckets. And they also have different, each bucket has sort of a different focus. And so the point here is many of them have more of a landscape watershed type of a focus, but some of them are very specific to a water body and a specific type of a program. And then there's some hybrid tools out there that we're trying to evolve as an agency and create. So the important thing here is recognize that there's a lot of different programs that could impact our ability to do what you want us to do. And stormwater is what I'm going to talk about because that's why I'm here. The wetland program is our other big gun. I call these are two big guns because when it comes to a project that needs approval from us, we have one of two ways to get at them, and that's through the stormwater program or through a 401 certification or sort of a wetland permitting action. And the difference is significant, though, because the wetland action is often a one-to-one relationship. It's us sitting down with the builder, negotiating what goes where and how it plays out. Whereas the stormwater program tends to be more programmatic, general, do these good things, and you should have a general plan in your city, and you should have an ordinance that says you can't do things. But when it comes to this specifics, we rarely get involved. The point there is actually that from a resource standpoint, there's a lot of projects in California that need this kind of attention. And we only give our one-to-one attention on the ones that are really important and significant or got the attention of someone else. So that's why we write general things that try to set the goals and the visions and let the system work itself out. 401 I'm not going to get into for time concerns. 402, this is the Clean Water Act section 402, and that's what drives the point source regulations. Stormwater is a point source. How many people are surprised to hear me say stormwater is a point source? Do you recognize that it's a point source because of the fact that it's a big landscape stuff, or is it the outfall? It's the outfall. It's all about the outfall for us. So we're regulating what comes out of the pipe into Jolly Giant Creek or into the bay. And what happens up in the watershed, yeah, there's some non-point source characteristics to it in our world, but it's really regulating a point source. So we have very strict regulations and standards that we hold people to because we've, as an agency or as a system, we've decided to put it in the box similar to a wastewater treatment plant or an industrial plant with a big pipe going out into the water body. We've decided to treat them one and the same. And that is advantageous in some ways, but it's limiting in many others. The stormwater program is also broken into two major types of activities: industrial activities and municipal activities. And so the industrial actually has a subset also called construction, which is a type of industrial activity, if you will. And then the other group, the municipal group, that is where we, like Paul and others, work with cities. They write plans. They have these specific plans and these ordinances and things that they do. And then we kind of let the city do its thing to comply. The permit is between the city and the regional board, though. Whereas the other types of activities, the permit is between the discharger, the industrial person, and the regional board. So that's another difference, is there's an overlap there. So many of these cities, they have industrial and construction things going on in them, but rather than deal with them directly, we say, you city, you go deal with them and you do the right thing, and we'll make sure that you do it with our permit on you. And what that means is there's different standards. Municipalities only have to sort of do things to the maximum extent practicable. And then the industrial people, they have a very much more specific standard. So when it comes to protecting from hydromodification, there's also a lot of different ways that we get at it. And the point of this slide is that each municipal permit in California is somewhat unique from the others. So you've got, I don't know, maybe 26 phase 1 municipal permits in California, meaning LA County, Orange County, San Diego County, Alameda County. The closest one to you would probably be, what, Sonoma County maybe? That's a phase 1. And then you've got this phase 2, which is smaller communities, and they're treated not on a county-wide basis. That's a statewide permit. But the point is each one of these, there's at least 50 different ways of us trying to express our expectations on how to build differently. We're telling people 26 plus different ways probably on how to build differently. And so my point is, as an agency, I think we need to focus on one set of standards that has flexibility and allowances for unique settings, but rather than have this competitive nature of one permit trying to outdo and build on what happened at another one, we know the science pretty well. We can state our objectives statewide. Tara? Yeah, well, the state board adopted a general permit, and then implementing it falls on the regions. So they are very much involved, but they didn't write the permit, so to speak, but they get involved in negotiating the plans. Each phase 2 person, they say, I'm going to enroll in the statewide permit, and then they submit their stuff, and given the right resources, the region will say, okay, we'll start working with you on your plan. And is that happened? Is Arcata enrolled and you've approved a plan? Okay. That's not the case statewide. Many of these phase 2 communities, they may have even submitted their plans, but we're just so swamped with work that we haven't got around to looking at them. So there's a lot of phase 2 stuff that isn't really approved and covered yet. This is a map of the communities in California that have any kind of municipal coverage. And it may not be real recent, but it's pretty recent, 06, I think. So the yellow means that they have some sort of coverage. All the areas that aren't yellow, they don't have municipal coverage. So any building activities, new development type of things that go on outside there, they're not going to be covered by this municipal program. So when we say we're regulating new development via our municipal permit, it's only in the areas that have yellow. And here's some slides in the rest of the state. There's a lot of different terms that we use to do this. I'm not going to get into it. The important thing is there's another way for us to get at the rest of the state. The parts that are white, if someone were to do new construction out there, they'd have to get a construction permit if it exceeds an acre in size. The program that Kristen and I work in, we're writing a new permit that we're expressing very specific new development standards. We want people that are outside those yellow areas to still have to do something to try to mitigate, if you will, or do some pollution prevention. So, and we think it's important because many of the new projects are happening outside of the yellow. The yellow areas have, like I said, more resources, lots of sort of fallback safety nets. But the white areas, they're out in the desert or they're out in some area where nobody's really looking or caring, and they want 5,000 homes. They'll do anything to get 5,000 homes. That's the point of that slide. I made my point that there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of programs. Besides the 2 I mentioned, TMDLs are getting into this idea of how to protect streams. They're specifying how much sediment loads, maybe even flows are going to come at some point via that. We have a watershed management program that sometimes kicks in. We have timber harvest up here that is another program. You got permitting actions related to that. So the point here is we have a lot of different ways that we get at it. They're not really well coordinated, and there's no statewide standards on how to do this and prevent hydromodification impacts. We also have money. This is important for you. I was trying to get some of our Bank of Water Board people up here, the Division of Financial Assistance. We give out tons of money for the propositions. They weren't available to come, but just know that there's a lot of money that's being earmarked, if you will, for these types of stream protection, low impact development projects. Sustainability is also a big interest. We're trying to figure out how to recognize that and give money to the good projects. So with that, I'm gonna end because I went over.